And one.
So this is Senate Government Operations. It is Thursday, February 25th. And today we're going to be looking at the Agency of Public Safety proposal. Let me give a couple ground rules. We have committee members and staff, and then we have people who we've asked to testify to us, to speak with us. And then we have people who might be in the room, but are just here joining us. So I'm asking not to use chat, please. The only person that uses chat is Gail, and that is to post things that people refer to, studies, documents, whatever. Because chat is a bit like side conversations in the committee rooms. And if we were in a committee room, we would ask you to please step outside and have your conversation. So that's what we're doing here. So we do not use chat. The other thing that I wanted to say is that we have at 2:00, we need to take a very short break and jump into a joint assembly with the House to, it's going to take about 5 minutes, I believe. It was going to take longer, but it's to count the votes and announce the results of the UVM trustees election. And my understanding is that because there are still some votes that haven't come in, they're giving it a little bit more time. And so all we're going to do is go into the joint session and adjourn and come back. So people, I think that while we're in the joint session, Gail, you can take it off the YouTube, but people should just stay in the room with us, because it doesn't make sense to leave and come back. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Is everybody clear about that? Okay, great. So with that, what I'm going to do is also say that I drew up this really cool little thing, which no one can see at all, of course. And I didn't know how to get it to anybody because I'm so technologically inept. But it's just, what it is an organizational chart for the proposal for the Agency of Public Safety. And I just wanted, so I'm just going to very quickly kind of run through that, and then we'll just open it up for people to speak with us. And I understand that we had a number of people who wanted to speak with us, and we will take them as they show up. Some people may sign in a little later, but we'll do our best to hear from everybody. So basically what we're talking about here is a restructuring, a reorganization of the department. And there is a bill, but the bill is 23 pages, and we haven't, as a committee, gone through it yet. What we're still looking at is the concepts. So that's what we're hearing about today. And basically what the concept is that there would be, the department would be elevated to an agency. And in the agency, there would be two departments. One would be a Department of Safety and Emergency Management. And in that, a Department, yes, of Safety and Emergency Management. And in that would be three divisions. One would be Homeland Security and Emergency Management. One would be inspections. Then there would be the Division of Fire Safety. And within that, it would include investigation and prevention and safety. And one would be a Division of Technical Response Unit. And that would include hazmat, search and rescue, and the swift water teams. Then there would be a Department of Law Enforcement. And within that department would be two divisions. One would be the Division of the Vermont State Police, and the other would be the division of the other state certified law enforcement officers, primarily right now, looking at Department of Motor Vehicles and Fish and Wildlife later on. And then there would be a division of support services, which is kind of the business functions of the agency. And that would include administration, communications, and communications includes 911, the PSAPs, and radio technology. And also the fleet and forensic law would be in there. And then there would be a division of training, which would include the fire academy and the police academy. And then there's an office of something or other, and I had no idea what to call it because it would contain VCIC. I didn't know what that would be called, but I realized that was a lot of information, but it is a restructuring. So given that, I would just like to start off here. And my first question is, does anybody, and what we want to do today is hear primarily from community people. We have had a chance to hear from the council and the academy and the Sheriff's Association and other agencies that might be affected by this. But today we're going to be hearing primarily from community people who have an interest and want to learn more. And we decided that it was best not to do it as a public hearing, because in a public hearing, the way they're traditionally handled is you get your 2 minutes, that's it, next person 2 minutes. And we want this instead to be more of a give and take so that we can, as you speak to us, we can ask you questions and clarify and have a conversation with you. So that's why this is a committee meeting as opposed to a public hearing, if that makes any sense to anybody. But so my first question is, of the people who have joined us here, does anybody have a time constraint and would like to go first? And what I will say is, I don't know if I can see everybody on my screen. So if you want to speak or something to say, please raise your hand. And if I don't see you, just say, Madam Chair, that would be great. And I will recognize you. So I see nobody seems, oh, you're using your little yellow hands.
Yeah, I see a little yellow hand right there. Yeah, I see two.
Yes, I see little yellow hands. I tend to prefer real hands, but little yellow hands work. Yes, thank you. Reverend Cockrell,
yes, ma'am.
Do you have a time constraint?
It would help me out a lot. I've got an interview I've got to do this afternoon. So if I could go early in the process, I'd truly appreciate it.
I would be pleased to have you go now. And it is now 1:45. So if you're in the middle of your testimony, please forgive us if we have to leave at 2:00, okay?
Okay, I won't be long.
I saw somebody else's little yellow hand. Oh, Jess, okay. You have a time constraint also?
I would love to get back to work if possible.
I will take you both very soon, okay?
Thank you.
Let's start with the Reverend then.
Thank you very
much. Let me first, because many of you aren't with us all the time. Let's introduce ourselves as committee members so that you know who we are and where we're from. I'm Jeanette White, and I'm from Windham County. I live in Putney. This is Sarah Polina.
I'm Anthony Polina. I represent Washington County.
Brian Collmore, Rutland County.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
Aisha Ram, Chittenden County.
And we have with us Amaran Aberjoili, who is our attorney, and behind the scenes is Gail Kerrigan, who kind of takes care of us here. So
Madam
with
Chair.
that, oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
I was just going to echo everybody. There's folks who are civilians on the call that all of us are on time constraints because we're civilians. But I wanted to just ask if the chair could please with a little leniency, allow the rest of the people in the room to introduce themselves. This is a kind of a setting that is unusual, that is not normal for a number of us. And this involves policing, and there are some people who won't even come and testify because they're kind of on edge. So how about if we get some introductions so folks know who's in the room? I know some of you, but I think it'd be appropriate and maybe even polite.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. So with that, I'll start with my screen here and call on people to introduce themselves. Does that work? So, Mr. Sheets.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark, good to see you again. I'm Bill Sheets. I'm the Interim Executive Director of the Vermont Police Academy, Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
And Bill Sorrell.
Yes, Bill Sorrell, former Attorney General and the chair of the newly created Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
And I see Tony Fakis there.
Tony Fakis, Director of Enforcement Safety Division at Motor Vehicle Department.
And I see John Federico.
Hello, yes, John Federico. I'm an employee of the Department of Motor Vehicles Enforcement and Safety. I'm an inspector there, and I'm a VSEA representative to the LEAB and the Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
Thank you. And I see Mike Sherling, Commissioner Sherling.
Good afternoon, folks. Mike Sherling, Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety.
And Mark Anderson.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and everyone else. Mark Anderson, Windham County Sheriff. I'm also the second Vice President of the Vermont Sheriff's Association and the Sheriff's Association designee to the Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
Did I miss anybody? All right, I hope that helps. And I will say, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but if there are people who feel that they really want to come and speak with us, we could do a session. We are entitled to go into executive session, and we could do that if there are people who really feel they want to speak with us, but not have it either go live broadcasted or have other people in the room. So I offer that when we get to that point, okay? All right, so given that, I was going to go first to the Reverend, but and I'm going to go first to Miss Laporte. Is that how you say your name?
Yeah, I'm also, especially, I don't have a hard stop. I don't have another call. So if the Reverend wants to go first, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Please,
Okay.
Ladies first, ladies first.
I just wanted you to get back to work, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably won't be as brief, Reverend Cockrell. So just a warning.
Just remember that at 2 o'clock, we're going to do this switch-a-roo for about 5 or 6 minutes. Okay. But go ahead and just introduce yourself and speak to us.
Yeah, so my name is Jess Laporte. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently living in Burlington, Vermont, but I was born and raised in Stowe, Vermont, and kind of all across the Moyle County. I recently moved back to Vermont, actually right as the COVID pandemic was taking off, after living for a number of years abroad. And I'm calling in on this issue in ways that are directly related to this merger and also related in general to the state's approach to public safety reform and transformation. And I believe one of the initiatives was called modernization. And I want to speak on a couple of points. As a member of the public, it was brought to my attention that the state was seeking feedback on the modernization of policing process. And as I looked into that at the time, it was clear to me, and I don't know if it's still true because nobody has answered my inquiries, but Jennifer Morrison was the contact for engaging on that process. Jennifer Morrison is a woman who has a history of not welcoming and also targeting Black and other people of color who have sought to raise their voice against injustices in the criminal justice system, but specifically around policing in Burlington, where she was serving. As a member of the public, it doesn't bring me much comfort or interest in engaging with state bodies or much confidence in a potential restructuring of these departments when that was brought, when some members of the public tried to engage with that department around it. Sorry, I don't know if I'm using the right department, agency, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But when we tried to engage around it and nobody from that department, including Mike Sherling, who I emailed directly, responded to this request for information if she was still involved in this process. And I think it's just one of many examples of why people of color do not want to engage, because there isn't good faith and there isn't transparency. And Vermont continues to choose to engage people who have a history of racist behavior and of quieting and silencing the opinions of people of color, as well as just like the public on issues that have been deemed controversial, specifically around policing. In my communication with that department around this issue, I brought up concerns about having a meaningful opportunity for a diverse set of members of the community to weigh in on something like this. And I'm here testifying around, you know, a restructuring of these departments and creation of an agency, really against my own best interests and safety, because Black activists in this state that speak, you know, regularly on these issues are often targets of civilian harassment and also harassment by people in public service positions, local politicians, and people like Jennifer Morrison, who held a position in the Burlington Police Department. So I am advocating that restructuring like this, in the same way that you have already heard from people who are within law enforcement and within the current system, that there be a structured and meaningful way to engage with people who are everyday citizens, and in particular, marginalized groups that have been disproportionately victimized by the police, because this involves integrating law enforcement with these other bodies. I think many of us are advocating for there to be independence and other forms of public safety that are not intertwined with law enforcement. So I understand that in some ways, you know, it can be bureaucratic restructuring, but this is all incredibly important to have in mind. And it's not lost on me that, like, there's only really the three of us calling in as people of color. In a related note as well, I believe that any restructuring, this is me speaking as an individual, any restructuring of public safety should include an independent body that has investigatory and disciplinary power over law enforcement at the state level as well as at local levels. There is a proposal on the table, I believe, brought by Senator Ram. I'm not sure, Ram, sorry. I'm not sure all of the details of it. But from what I can, you know, glean from what is available, it doesn't include disciplinary power. It is not an independent body, as there would be law enforcement officers and members of policing institutions a part of it. And it also doesn't have investigatory power. We're seeing this play out in Burlington currently, where a body like this was proposed that had those three principles in addition to transparency and representation. It was successful to go to the ballot, and the mayor vetoed it. And within the same week, the police used excessive force on a member of the public that did not follow protocol. And the current police commission was unable to subpoena additional video evidence related to the incident, was unable to conduct their own independent investigation, and were only able to review what the interim or acting or whatever chief of police provided to them. Then when they requested additional information to have more of an investigation. They were individually harassed by members of the police union, and without building in some sort of an accountability mechanism that is effective into this restructuring, you're leaving a huge blind spot in which a year after this, activists like myself will have to be raising our voices to ask for the creation of a board like this. So I would strongly encourage that in this restructuring process. And I want to reiterate the importance that this has input from communities, not just Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but victims of domestic violence. Police officers are much more likely to, they have a higher, oh my gosh, I can't even speak, but higher rates of committing domestic violence. Members of the unhoused community, those who have experienced or have direct experience with drug and substance abuse should be their voices should be included, because they are the ones that are most likely to interact with the police. And I'm talking a lot about the police because you're linking law enforcement with all of our other emergency services in a way in which those other services will not remain independent. Thank you.
So I'm going to, I think it's getting close to 2 o'clock, but I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and then maybe we take the break and then come back. Does that work? And you can answer the questions when we come back. I just want to make sure that, so I guess the question I would have is that we do have the Criminal Justice Council, which was expanded to include community members and the voices that you were just referring to. I think there's somebody from the Network on Domestic Violence and a number of other voices that were added to the council. And it acts as the investigative and disciplinary council. So I just wondered if it remains completely independent from the agency, if that satisfies the need for an oversight and independent body, or if that doesn't, and there needs to be something else entirely. So I don't want you to have to try to answer all that right now, because I'm going to have to.
I can just be like brief, and if not, I think for me, I am unsure the specific powers of that body to subpoena evidence and to conduct an independent investigation, as opposed to it being an investigation within internal affairs. That is a key distinguisher. And also, I just want to highlight that representation of executive directors or program coordinators or managers from organizations around the state are not the same as people with lived experience, who tend to not only have challenges to rise into those positions of power and visibility, but also are unlikely to want to expose themselves to like a public election due to their personal lived experience. And that's why we don't see them as often as elected officials. So yeah, just on representation and investigatory power, that's kind of where I am, but I haven't reviewed their powers to see how it lines up or doesn't line up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, and we can look at those, and also because there is a lot of sentiment to make sure that body, it remains completely independent.
Independent. That's a key value.
Mm-hmm. So I think.
So we'll go on.
We're going to, but please stay with us if you would, the support, because we'd like to continue having you in the conversation if you're able to do it. Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're going to leave the meeting and then we're going to come back, but you all